What does it mean to be wealthy? In today's video, I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on a recent survey that came out that touches on the mindset of wealth in the US. My name is Josh, and I'd like to welcome you to Your Financiation. At work today, well, on the day of this recording, during lunch I was browsing random news articles and I came across this one that talked about the perception of wealth in the US. Now I thought that would be an interesting side topic to cover since it's related to money, finance, and investing. I wanted to come up with a name for videos like this where I share my thoughts on things that I see or read. Now the temporary name that I decided to go with was On a Tangent. So I'll call this video, along with other ones like it, Financiation on a Tangent. But to make it a little more interesting, I would love it if you would comment what you think the name of this series should be called, of videos like this where they're kind of on a tangent. And whichever comment gets the most likes, I'll go with that name for this series. Now I want to clarify that most of the surveys that I reference on this channel, like in this video and in future videos, they're typically going to have a small pool of respondents. And all that means is that when these surveys are done, there's just like a small group of people that they ask these questions to. And I want you to be aware of that because for me, like, I really dislike when news media outlets reference a survey where they asked maybe 1,000 people specific questions and they use that to get you to feel a certain way, because we're a country of 332 million people and there's no way that a survey of 1,000 people is going to tell you that you fall within an accurate category of like people who are going broke or people who have lost their jobs this month. Like, it's very difficult to gather those specific points of data because there's just so many people, and I just want you to be aware of that. So when I do mention a survey in future videos, I will always tell you how many people have been surveyed, so you can kind of take those surveys with a grain of salt. But I'm more interested in the surveys for their value in generating conversation, and that's the whole point of this particular video. Like, I want to talk about what it means to be wealthy, not necessarily focus in on the facts of what the survey found based on this small pool of people. I won't be going over all the findings, but I'll start with the interesting ones, and then I'll get into my thoughts on it. Now, this survey was done by Edelman Financial Engines, which is a top independent wealth planning and investment advisory firm. Now, this was a survey of more than 2,000 people from different wealth brackets, and they shared their thoughts on various aspects related to wealth. Now, what this survey found was that only about 12% of total respondents and 29% of millionaires felt wealthy. A majority, 61%, said that they felt less financially secure than they expected to be at their current stage in life, which is kind of where I fall in. 57% said they would feel wealthy with $1 million in the bank. 53% of those that had at least $500,000 in the bank and $3 million in assets said it would take $3 million in the bank to feel wealthy, and 33% said it would take over $5 million. Regardless of how much you had, inflation, fear of recession, and politics were listed as top financial concerns. It makes sense. 83% said working with a financial professional eased their stress. Yeah, that makes sense too. Nearly 80% of the respondents said that in today's current economic climate, it has been difficult to stay on track with their financial goals. And I mean, that makes sense, right? When you look at inflation and how it's raised the prices of everything, things like gas, groceries, utilities, that eats away at the income that you have left over at the end of the month. And your ability to save or invest diminishes quite a bit with the raising cost of everything. For all respondents, the 3 most overwhelming tasks to handle included financial planning, minimizing taxes, and handling investments. Now, I'm of the opinion that those 3 worries right there, the financial planning, minimizing taxes, and handling investments, those are worries of people who are probably doing pretty well for themselves. Because when I think about my worries, I think about making sure I pay the bills on time, managing my debt properly, and hoping no emergencies pop up. But I'm starting to get into my thoughts on the whole thing, so let's move into that. Back to my original question of what does it mean to be wealthy? And we all have different ideas of what that means, but can you put a dollar amount to it? Or does being wealthy mean more than just money? Is there a difference between being wealthy and being rich? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. From what I've learned about money over the last couple of years, my idea of wealth has completely changed. I always thought that being wealthy and being rich were kind of the same thing. And I've since learned that being rich is more of a short-term mindset and being wealthy is more of a long-term mindset. And I'll give you an example. It's all too common for people to come into very suddenly a large amount of cash, like winning the lottery, and for them to blow all that money within the first few years. And that's just because they don't know how to manage it and they don't know who to go to manage it. And that to me is the idea that they were rich, but they didn't know what to do with the money because they weren't financially educated to handle it properly and responsibly. I want to get into some key factors that I believe define whether or not you're wealthy. And let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments below. Now, the first one is owning a home. And the reason why I chose that as the first key factor is because when you think about someone who came from nothing and worked their butt off to get to a point where they had the ability to purchase their first home, you're going to measure that person's success by how disciplined they were in their life to be able to save enough to get to that point, right? It's the socially accepted way of measuring someone's success in life. Now, this factor alone doesn't necessarily mean that someone's wealthy, because they could own their home but still be struggling financially. So let's get into the second key factor. The second key factor is having no debt and an excellent credit score. Now, what I want to illustrate with this key factor is if you have a great credit score and you have no debt, it probably means that you know your way around credit. You understand that you have to open up lines of credit, but also be on top of paying that off. Again, this comes back to this idea of discipline that I'm going to bring up over and over again. You want to be paying off your debt every month so that you're not racking up interest. Interest eats away at your ability to save or invest, and anything that eats away at that ability lowers your ability to build wealth over time. The third key factor I have listed here is having a separate emergency fund of at least 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. Now, the reason why I have that listed as a key factor is because it's financially responsible to have money set aside for an emergency. The simplest scenario I could give you is that if, say, your car were to break down and you didn't have that money on the side to just put towards fixing your car, what's more than likely going to happen is you're going to open up a line of credit with a high amount of interest, and it's going to be much harder to pay that off month to month than it would have been if you just had the money on the side to pay for that specific emergency. So I'd urge you to just take a few months to set some money aside to start building your emergency fund. You never know when it's going to be a rainy day and you're going to need it. Now, the last key factor in determining whether or not someone is wealthy, in my own opinion, is the ability to make your own choices without having to worry about money. What do I mean by that? If you had enough money in the bank and enough invested to where your primary source of income came off of dividends from your investments, you would have the ultimate choice in deciding what it is you're going to do in life that keeps you fulfilled. Now, if that isn't the ultimate factor in deciding whether or not you're wealthy, I don't know what is. I mean, if I had to put a dollar value to what I thought it took to get there, I would say it's probably somewhere between 5 and 10 million. A lot of people are going to have a lot of different answers in terms of what they think it takes to get wealthy. So, like I said, I'd love to hear all your thoughts, and please comment below and let me know what you think about this video, and what you think it means to be wealthy. Until next time.